In ancient Rome, beauty was never a purely personal matter. It was not simply about attraction, vanity, or individual preference. Physical appearance was understood as a visible reflection of moral character, social discipline, and even political reliability. To Roman eyes, the body spoke constantly, and it was judged without mercy. Roman beauty standards were shaped by hierarchy. They differed sharply depending on gender, class, age, and citizenship. What was admired in one person might be condemned in another. A feature considered refined in an elite woman could be mocked in a man, while the same trait might be tolerated or ignored in a slave. Beauty in Rome was not democratic. It was regulated by culture and enforced through social pressure. For Roman men, the ideal appearance emphasized restraint and authority rather than ornament. A respectable male citizen was expected to look controlled, composed, and physically capable, but not indulgent. Excessive grooming was treated with suspicion. Writers such as Seneca and Pliny criticized men who spent too much time on their hair or skin, associating such behavior with moral weakness or foreign decadence. The Roman male body was supposed to signal discipline. Moderate musculature was admired, particularly in soldiers and laborers, but exaggerated bulk was unnecessary. Scars from military service were often worn with pride, as evidence of courage and loyalty. Wrinkles were not automatically undesirable. In fact, signs of age could suggest experience and authority, especially in political life. Hair carried strong symbolic weight. For men, short hair was the norm, reflecting order and civility. Long or elaborately styled hair could provoke ridicule, particularly if it suggested Greek influence or effeminacy. Beards went in and out of fashion depending on the era, but they were always loaded with meaning. A beard could represent philosophical seriousness, while a clean-shaven face often suggested Roman traditionalism. Women in ancient Rome were judged far more harshly and far more frequently. Female beauty standards were elaborate, demanding, and often contradictory. A Roman woman was expected to appear youthful but not seductive, refined but not artificial, well-groomed but never accused of excess. Pale skin was widely admired among elite women. It signaled leisure and high status, suggesting that a woman did not work outdoors. Darkness of complexion could imply manual labor or servile origins. To achieve this pallor, women used powders made from chalk or lead-based compounds, unaware of their long-term toxicity. Facial features were closely scrutinized. Large eyes were praised, particularly when enhanced with kohl or soot-based cosmetics. Smooth skin was essential, leading to the widespread use of creams, oils, and exfoliating treatments. Many of these products were imported, expensive, and strongly scented, further reinforcing class distinctions. Hair was perhaps the most complex element of Roman female beauty. Blonde hair became fashionable during the imperial period, influenced by contact with northern European populations. Some women dyed their hair using plant-based mixtures, while others wore wigs made from the hair of enslaved people. These wigs could be elaborate, carefully styled into towering arrangements that required professional hairdressers. At the same time, excessive ornamentation could attract criticism. Roman moralists frequently attacked women they believed relied too heavily on cosmetics, accusing them of deception or moral corruption. A woman who appeared too artificial risked being associated with sexual impropriety, regardless of her actual behavior. Body shape also carried social meaning. Extreme thinness was not admired, nor was excessive weight. The ideal female body was soft but controlled, suggesting fertility without indulgence. Pregnancy could temporarily shield a woman from aesthetic judgment, but aging rarely did. Older women were often mocked in literature, their attempts to preserve youth portrayed as foolish or immoral. Beauty standards in Rome were not only aesthetic, they were ethical. Roman writers frequently linked physical appearance to inner virtue. A symmetrical face suggested balance of mind. A disciplined body implied self-control. Conversely, physical irregularities were sometimes interpreted as signs of moral failing or divine disfavor. This belief extended into medicine and science. Roman physicians, drawing on Greek theories, believed that the body's appearance reflected the balance of internal humors. Acne, pallor, or excessive hair growth could be treated not only with topical remedies but with dietary and lifestyle changes meant to restore moral and physical equilibrium. Hygiene played a central role in appearance, but Roman cleanliness differed from modern expectations. Public baths were a cornerstone of daily life, and bathing was a social ritual as much as a hygienic one. Oils were applied to the skin and scraped away with metal tools called strigils, removing sweat and dirt. This process left the skin smooth and lightly scented. However, soap as we understand it was rarely used. Teeth were cleaned with abrasive powders, sometimes containing crushed bones or shells. Breath fresheners were improvised, and body odors were masked with perfumes rather than eliminated. These scents were often heavy and persistent, forming part of a person's public identity. Slaves and freed people occupied a different aesthetic world. Their bodies were judged less as expressions of virtue and more as instruments of labor. Scars, deformities, and signs of exhaustion were common and largely ignored by elites. Enslaved individuals could be valued for physical attractiveness, but this appreciation was transactional rather than respectful. Children, too, were evaluated according to appearance. Healthy, well-formed infants were celebrated, while physical abnormalities could provoke anxiety or superstition. Although exposure of infants declined during the imperial period, beauty and physical normality still influenced a child's perceived future. As Rome expanded, beauty standards absorbed foreign influences. Greek ideals of proportion, Egyptian cosmetics, and Eastern perfumes all entered Roman culture. Yet Rome never fully surrendered its belief that restraint mattered more than adornment. Excess, whether in luxury or appearance, was always morally suspect. By the later empire, these standards began to fragment. Economic instability, religious change, and shifting values altered how appearance was judged. Christian writers challenged traditional ideals, emphasizing modesty and spiritual beauty over physical form. Cosmetics and elaborate hairstyles increasingly came under criticism as symbols of vanity. Still, the Roman obsession with appearance never disappeared entirely. It evolved, leaving behind a legacy that continues to shape Western ideas of beauty, age, and respectability. What remains striking is how closely beauty in ancient Rome was tied to power. To look correct was to belong. To fail in appearance was to invite judgment, exclusion, or ridicule. The Roman body was never just a body. It was a statement, constantly read by society, and rarely forgiven for deviation. In the Roman world, the judgment of beauty did not end with adulthood. Aging was itself a moral and aesthetic issue. While age could grant authority to elite men, it often stripped women of social value. Roman literature is filled with anxious reflections on the aging body, revealing how deeply beauty standards were tied to fear of decline. For men, aging could be dignified if it followed the expected path. Gray hair and lined skin were not automatically signs of failure. In senators and statesmen, these features could symbolize wisdom, endurance, and service to the state. Portrait busts from the Republic often exaggerate wrinkles and sagging flesh, presenting age as proof of seriousness rather than decay. Yet this tolerance had limits. An older man who clung too strongly to youth by dyeing his hair, obsessively grooming his skin, or adopting youthful fashions was often mocked. Roman satire repeatedly ridiculed men who refused to age properly, portraying them as dishonest or morally unstable. The Roman ideal did not reject aging. It rejected denial. For women, the experience was far less forgiving. Youth was central to female beauty, and beauty was central to female worth. As a result, aging women were frequently portrayed as objects of ridicule or suspicion. Poets described older women who used cosmetics as deceptive, even grotesque, suggesting that attempts to preserve beauty beyond youth were unnatural. This anxiety fueled a wide market for anti-aging remedies. Creams promising to smooth wrinkles or restore complexion circulated widely, many based on animal fats, herbs, or mineral compounds. Some treatments were applied nightly, others consumed as tonics. Their effectiveness was uncertain, but their popularity reveals a persistent fear of visible decline. Disability and physical difference were even more complicated. Roman society valued physical wholeness, particularly among citizens. A body that deviated too far from the norm could attract stigma. Visible disabilities were sometimes interpreted as misfortune, sometimes as divine punishment, and occasionally as sources of shame for families. At the same time, Rome was practical. Veterans with injuries were respected for their service, especially if their wounds were acquired in battle. A limp or missing limb could become a symbol of sacrifice rather than inadequacy. Context mattered. The same physical difference could inspire honor or contempt depending on its origin and the individual's social standing. Slaves, again, lived under different standards. Their bodies were evaluated primarily for utility. Physical imperfections could reduce a slave's market value, and slave traders often exaggerated or concealed flaws. Beauty in enslaved bodies was commodified, detached from dignity. An attractive appearance could lead to exploitation rather than admiration. The Roman relationship with cosmetics reveals further contradictions. Despite frequent moral criticism, cosmetic use was widespread. Even those who condemned makeup often relied on it. This tension between public disapproval and private practice runs throughout Roman cultural history. Cosmetics were not subtle by modern standards. Foundations were thick, powders heavy, and perfumes strong. Many products contained ingredients now known to be harmful, including lead and mercury. Skin damage, discoloration, and illness were common side effects, though rarely linked directly to the products themselves. Men also used cosmetics, though discreetly. Skin treatments, hair removal, and scenting oils were not uncommon, particularly among the elite. What mattered was not the practice itself, but whether it appeared excessive or indulgent. Roman beauty culture punished visibility more than behavior. Hair removal deserves particular attention. Smooth skin was widely preferred, especially for women. Body hair was associated with barbarism or lack of refinement. Tweezers, pumice stones, resins, and depilatory creams were used regularly, often painfully. Literary sources make frequent reference to the discomfort involved, suggesting that beauty was expected to involve endurance. This endurance itself became a virtue. The willingness to suffer for appearance demonstrated discipline, especially for women. Pain was normalized, even aestheticized. In this sense, Roman beauty standards foreshadow later cultural patterns in which bodily discomfort is reframed as moral effort. Public spaces reinforced these standards. Baths, forums, and religious ceremonies were places of constant observation. Clothing, posture, grooming, and physical condition were all visible markers of status. To appear improperly groomed was not a private failure but a public one. Clothing worked in harmony with beauty ideals. Garments were designed to emphasize social roles rather than individual expression. For women, modest draping was essential. Excessive exposure could undermine respectability regardless of physical beauty. For men, clothing reinforced authority, maturity, and restraint. Even color carried meaning. Certain dyes were expensive and regulated. Wearing the wrong color could suggest pretension or moral laxity. Beauty in Rome was never isolated. It was woven into a broader visual language of order and hierarchy. Religious beliefs also influenced appearance. Ritual purity required cleanliness and appropriate presentation. Priests and priestesses followed specific grooming rules, reinforcing the idea that physical appearance reflected inner alignment with divine order. As Christianity gained influence, this framework shifted. The body became increasingly associated with temptation and moral risk. Physical beauty, once a sign of harmony, was reinterpreted as a potential distraction from spiritual truth. Cosmetics and elaborate grooming were criticized not only as vanity but as threats to salvation. Yet even as ideals changed, the Roman preoccupation with appearance endured. Standards softened in some areas and intensified in others, but the core assumption remained. The body mattered, and it was never neutral. In the end, Roman beauty standards tell us less about attraction and more about control. They reveal how a society used appearance to enforce values, maintain hierarchy, and define belonging. To live in Rome was to be seen constantly, judged quietly, and measured against an ideal that few could fully meet. And it is perhaps this quiet pressure, more than any specific cosmetic or hairstyle, that forms Rome's most enduring legacy in the history of beauty. Clothing worked in harmony with beauty ideals. Garments were designed to emphasize social roles rather than individual expression. For women, modest draping was essential. Excessive exposure could undermine respectability regardless of physical beauty. For men, clothing reinforced authority, maturity, and restraint. Even color carried meaning. Certain dyes were expensive and regulated. Wearing the wrong color could suggest pretension or moral laxity. Beauty in Rome was never isolated. It was woven into a broader visual language of order and hierarchy. Religious beliefs also influenced appearance. Ritual purity required cleanliness and appropriate presentation. Priests and priestesses followed specific grooming rules, reinforcing the idea that physical appearance reflected inner alignment with divine order. As Christianity gained influence, this framework shifted. The body became increasingly associated with temptation and moral risk. Physical beauty, once a sign of harmony, was reinterpreted as a potential distraction from spiritual truth. Cosmetics and elaborate grooming were criticized not only as vanity but as threats to salvation. Yet even as ideals changed, the Roman preoccupation with appearance endured. Standards softened in some areas and intensified in others, but the core assumption remained. The body mattered, and it was never neutral. In the end, Roman beauty standards tell us less about attraction and more about control. They reveal how a society used appearance to enforce values, maintain hierarchy, and define belonging. To live in Rome was to be seen constantly, judged quietly, and measured against an ideal that few could fully meet. And it is perhaps this quiet pressure, more than any specific cosmetic or hairstyle, that forms Rome's most enduring legacy in the history of beauty. Foreign bodies complicated these assumptions. As Rome absorbed diverse populations, new physical traits entered the urban landscape. Skin tones, facial structures, and hair types varied widely. Roman writers often commented on these differences, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with prejudice. Beauty standards adjusted slowly. While Roman ideals remained dominant, exotic features could become fashionable, particularly among elites seeking novelty. At the same time, foreignness could be marked as inferior. Beauty, like citizenship, was conditional. Clothing and grooming practices were used to manage this diversity. Roman dress codes visually separated citizens from non-citizens. Hair, beards, and accessories became tools for signaling identity. To adopt Roman beauty norms was to claim belonging, even if full acceptance remained out of reach. Gender nonconformity posed another challenge. Roman culture recognized a spectrum of behaviors but policed them strictly. A man who appeared too soft or decorative risked being labeled morally suspect. A woman who appeared too assertive or physically imposing could be criticized as unfeminine. These judgments were not merely social. They had legal and political implications. Reputation mattered deeply in Rome. A damaged public image could limit opportunities, weaken alliances, and invite attack from rivals. Beauty standards thus functioned as a form of social regulation. Even death did not end this concern. Funerary portraits and inscriptions carefully curated how the deceased would be remembered. Bodies were dressed, posed, and described according to ideal traits. The afterlife reputation depended on appearance as much as achievement. Over time, the Roman emphasis on controlled beauty contributed to a broader Western tradition that equates appearance with character. The idea that a good person looks a certain way did not disappear with the empire. It persisted, adapted, and resurfaced in new forms. When we examine Roman beauty standards today, their strangeness is often overshadowed by their familiarity. The tools differ, the materials change, but the underlying logic remains recognizable. Discipline, youth, balance, and restraint continue to shape how bodies are judged. Rome reminds us that beauty has rarely been innocent. It has almost always been connected to power, morality, and belonging. To study Roman appearance is to study how societies quietly enforced their values, through mirrors, glances, and unspoken rules. And in that sense, the history of beauty in ancient Rome is not distant at all. It is uncomfortably close. The economic dimension of beauty in ancient Rome is impossible to ignore. Appearance was expensive. Every layer of grooming, oils, perfumes, cosmetics, hairpieces, clothing, and time itself required resources. As a result, beauty standards did not simply describe ideals. They actively reinforced inequality. For elite families, maintaining the correct appearance was part of social survival. A household's reputation could be judged by how its women appeared in public, how its men carried themselves, and even how its slaves were groomed. Well-presented servants reflected the discipline and wealth of their owners. Neglect, by contrast, suggested disorder or decline. This dynamic placed enormous pressure on women of status. While legally constrained in many ways, they were visually prominent representatives of their families. A matron's appearance could quietly influence alliances, respect, and trust. Beauty, in this sense, functioned as social capital, something to be invested in, maintained, and protected. Lower status individuals faced a different reality. Artisans, laborers, and the urban poor lived in conditions that made elite beauty standards nearly impossible to meet. Long working hours, exposure to weather, and limited access to baths or cosmetics left visible marks on the body. These marks were not neutral. They signaled class, reinforcing social boundaries at a glance. Yet aspiration persisted. Even among the poor, people adopted simplified versions of elite grooming when possible. Inexpensive oils, second-hand garments, and improvised cosmetics allowed some participation in the visual culture of respectability. The desire to look proper cut across class lines, even when fulfillment did not. Markets responded to this demand. Roman cities were full of vendors selling beauty-related goods at different price levels. Perfumes ranged from rare imported blends to crude local imitations. Cosmetics were diluted, reused, or repackaged. The beauty economy was sophisticated, adaptable, and deeply integrated into daily life. This commercialization intensified moral criticism. Writers accused merchants of encouraging vanity and deception. Women were blamed for participating, men for tolerating it. Yet consumption continued, suggesting that beauty standards were not imposed from above alone. They were sustained by collective participation. The body also intersected with sexuality in complex ways. Roman culture did not separate beauty from sexual meaning, but it did regulate how that meaning was expressed. A woman's attractiveness was expected to exist primarily within marriage. Visible allure outside that context risked accusations of promiscuity, regardless of intent. For men, sexual desirability was less tightly controlled but still bounded. Youthful beauty could be admired, particularly in artistic or poetic contexts, yet public behavior was expected to remain restrained. Desire was acknowledged, but indulgence was criticized. This tension created a narrow path. To be attractive but not provocative, groomed but not excessive, youthful but not artificial. These contradictions shaped Roman anxiety around appearance. Beauty was expected to be present but invisible in its effort. Religious festivals and public ceremonies heightened these pressures. On such occasions, appearance carried symbolic weight. Clothing, grooming, and posture became expressions of civic participation and piety. Failure to present oneself correctly could be interpreted as disrespect toward the gods or the community. At the same time, these events offered rare opportunities for display. Elaborate hairstyles, fine garments, and careful grooming were temporarily legitimized. The boundaries of acceptable beauty shifted, revealing their flexibility and cultural construction. Over centuries, these standards adapted but did not disappear. Even as political power fragmented and economic conditions worsened, the language of appearance remained. Late Roman authors still discussed grooming, modesty, and bodily discipline, though often with a tone of nostalgia or moral alarm. Christian thinkers reframed the conversation rather than ending it. The ideal body became modest, restrained, and oriented toward spiritual goals. Yet the expectation of control remained. Beauty was not rejected, it was moralized differently. In monasteries and Christian communities, grooming rules governed hair, clothing, and cleanliness. Excess remained suspect. The disciplined body persisted as an ethical symbol, echoing older Roman values beneath new theological language. What this continuity reveals is that Roman beauty standards were not superficial customs. They were part of a larger system that connected body, morality, and order. To change them required more than new fashions. It required a new way of understanding the human body itself. Modern audiences often approach Roman beauty with curiosity or amusement. Lead-based makeup, painful hair removal, rigid moral judgments all appear distant. Yet the underlying patterns feel familiar. The association between appearance and worth, between self-control and virtue, has endured. Rome offers a reminder that beauty standards are rarely about beauty alone. They are tools societies use to sort, judge, and regulate their members. They tell people not only how to look, but how to live. In studying ancient Rome, we see how deeply these expectations can embed themselves into everyday life. The mirror becomes a site of discipline. The body becomes a project. And the gaze of others becomes an invisible authority. This is perhaps Rome's most lasting influence. Not a particular hairstyle or cosmetic, but the idea that to be acceptable, one must look acceptable first. The legal system of ancient Rome also reflected and reinforced ideas about the body and appearance. While Roman law did not explicitly regulate beauty, it frequently addressed issues that intersected with physical presentation. Dress codes, public decorum, and expectations of bodily conduct all appeared indirectly in legal discourse. The law assumed that bodies would communicate status clearly and reliably, and it intervened when those signals were disrupted. Certain garments were restricted to specific classes, and misuse could provoke suspicion or punishment. A person who dressed above their status was not merely committing a fashion error. They were challenging social order. In this way, appearance became a legal matter, not just a cultural one. Beauty and presentation were tools for maintaining clarity in a rigidly hierarchical society. Marriage laws further demonstrate how deeply appearance mattered. While marriages among elites were political and economic arrangements, physical suitability was still considered. A healthy body suggested fertility and stability. Physical impairments, especially those visible, could quietly undermine marital prospects, even when not formally acknowledged. This emphasis on the visible body extended to moral accusations. Roman courts frequently relied on character judgments, and appearance played a role in shaping perception. A disheveled, poorly presented individual might be read as unreliable or lacking self-control. Conversely, a composed appearance could lend credibility, even when evidence was weak. Public punishment, when it occurred, often targeted the body directly. Humiliation, exposure, and marking were designed to alter how a person was seen. The damaged body became a warning. Beauty standards thus intersected with power at their most explicit level, the authority to define which bodies deserved respect. Military life introduced another dimension. Soldiers were expected to maintain a certain appearance that reflected discipline and readiness. Cleanliness, uniformity, and physical condition mattered. A soldier who appeared neglected risked being perceived as unfit regardless of actual skill. Scars acquired in service, however, reversed ordinary beauty judgments. Marks that would be stigmatized in civilian life could become badges of honor. This conditional valuation of physical damage reveals the flexibility of Roman aesthetics when aligned with state values. In rural areas, standards shifted again. Agricultural labor demanded strength and endurance rather than refinement. Sun-darkened skin, calloused hands, and weathered faces were signs of productivity, not failure. Yet even here, the urban ideal exerted influence. Rural elites often attempted to emulate city grooming when possible, signaling their cultural alignment with Rome. Literature from the countryside frequently contrasts natural simplicity with urban excess. These contrasts reveal an ongoing debate within Roman culture. whether beauty should be cultivated or restrained. Neither side rejected appearance altogether. They argued instead about how much attention was appropriate. This debate intensified during periods of crisis. Economic downturns, plagues, and political instability often prompted renewed criticism of luxury and grooming. Writers urged a return to austerity, framing beauty practices as symptoms of moral decay. Yet once stability returned, those practices resurfaced. Such cycles suggest that Roman beauty standards were resilient because they adapted to circumstance. They could tighten or relax, moralize or tolerate without disappearing. The ideal body remained a reference point even when unattainable. Education in rhetoric further entrenched these ideas. Orators were trained not only in speech but in physical presentation. Gesture, posture, facial expression, and voice were carefully controlled. A successful speaker embodied harmony and discipline. An uncontrolled body undermined persuasive power. This rhetorical training reveals how deeply appearance was linked to authority. To speak effectively in public was to demonstrate mastery over oneself. The audience judged the body as much as the words. Beauty, in this context, meant coherence between form and function. Women, excluded from formal rhetoric, were nonetheless subject to similar scrutiny in domestic and religious settings. Their appearance communicated the moral health of the household. A well-managed body suggested a well-managed family. Even private spaces were not free from these expectations. Letters between family members often included comments on health and appearance. These remarks were not trivial. They reflected concern about social standing and future prospects. To appear unwell or neglected could signal vulnerability. The Roman household thus functioned as a training ground for bodily discipline. Children observed how elders presented themselves, how servants were groomed, and how guests were received. Beauty standards were transmitted quietly, through repetition rather than instruction. When individuals failed to meet these standards, the consequences were often subtle rather than dramatic. Social distance, quiet exclusion, or diminished respect could follow. Rarely was punishment explicit. The system relied on internalized judgment. This internalization made beauty standards particularly powerful. People monitored themselves, anticipating how they would be seen. The external gaze became an internal one. Self-surveillance replaced enforcement. Over time, this dynamic shaped Roman subjectivity itself. Identity was experienced through the body as much as through thought or belief. To be Roman was, in part, to look Roman, or at least to try. The endurance of these patterns helps explain their legacy. When the political structures of Rome collapsed, many of its bodily ideals remained embedded in later European cultures. The association between self-control, moral worth, and appearance did not vanish. It evolved. The private sphere of Roman life reveals yet another layer of beauty standards, one that operated away from formal law and public ceremony but was no less influential. Inside the home, appearance structured relationships between spouses, parents and children, masters and servants. The domestic environment was where ideals were rehearsed daily, normalized through routine rather than proclamation. Marriage manuals and moral writings frequently addressed how spouses should maintain themselves physically. A wife was encouraged to remain attractive to her husband, but never to the point of public display. Beauty was framed as a duty owed within marriage, not a personal right. At the same time, a husband was expected to remain dignified and controlled, avoiding both neglect and indulgence. This balance was difficult to sustain. Domestic letters and poems reveal tension, jealousy, and anxiety surrounding appearance. Women worried about rivals younger than themselves. Men expressed unease about fading vigor or thinning hair. These concerns were not trivial. They threatened the stability of households built on reputation and inheritance. Servants played a central role in maintaining beauty standards. Hairdressers, bath attendants, and cosmetic preparers were often enslaved individuals whose labor made elite appearance possible. Their skill was essential, yet their own bodies were rarely granted the same consideration. The asymmetry is striking. Beauty depended on invisible work performed by those excluded from its rewards. Children absorbed these lessons early. They observed which bodies were praised and which were ignored, which features were corrected and which were tolerated. Praise for neatness, posture, and composure reinforced the idea that the body was always under evaluation. Correction was often subtle, delivered through comparison rather than instruction. Illness complicated these expectations. Sickness altered appearance, sometimes temporarily, sometimes permanently. While Roman medicine sought to restore health, prolonged illness could damage reputation. A body that failed repeatedly was seen as unreliable. This perception affected marriage prospects, career advancement, and social trust. Despite this, Romans did not fully equate beauty with health. A person could appear healthy while being ill, and vice versa. Appearance mattered because it was visible, not because it was accurate. This reliance on surface indicators reveals the limitations of Roman understanding, but also its practicality. Judgments had to be made quickly, based on what could be seen. The visual emphasis extended to emotion. Facial expression was expected to be controlled. Excessive display of feeling could disrupt appearance, undermining dignity. Grief, joy, anger, all were regulated through bodily discipline. Beauty included emotional restraint, visible calm, and measured response. This emotional aspect is often overlooked, yet it was central. A composed face signaled rationality. An uncontrolled one suggested instability. In public life, especially, the ability to maintain an appropriate expression mattered as much as physical symmetry. The Roman theater exaggerated these ideas. Actors used masks to represent types: youth, age, virtue, vice. These visual shortcuts reinforced associations between appearance and character. Audiences learned to read faces, bodies, and gestures as moral signals. Real life followed similar patterns, though less explicitly. Over time, such associations hardened into stereotypes. Certain features became shorthand for certain traits. Baldness could suggest age or authority, but also decline. Excessive thinness might imply self-control or sickness. The same feature could be read differently depending on context, but the impulse to interpret remained constant. Roman satire exploited this impulse. Writers mocked those whose appearance did not align with their social role. A poor man dressed richly, a woman appearing too youthful, a man overly groomed. These figures invited ridicule. Humor reinforced boundaries by punishing deviation. Yet satire also reveals anxiety. The frequency with which writers complained about deception suggests that appearance was not as reliable as ideology claimed. Cosmetics worked. Clothing misled. Bodies aged unpredictably. The visual system was fragile, constantly threatened by ambiguity. This fragility prompted ever more attention to regulation. Moralists wrote, teachers instructed, families corrected. The effort to stabilize meaning through appearance never ended. It intensified precisely because it was never fully successful. As Rome entered its later centuries, this tension deepened. Economic disparity increased. Urban infrastructure decayed. Maintaining ideal appearance became harder, even for elites. Criticism of luxury grew louder, yet so did longing for it. Beauty standards became sites of nostalgia, symbols of a perceived lost order. Christian writers interpreted this nostalgia differently. They argued that the instability of beauty proved its unreliability. True worth, they claimed, could not be seen. Yet even as they criticized physical standards, they replaced them with new ones. Modest dress, controlled hair, disciplined posture. The body remained central even when de-emphasized. What changed was the language, not the structure. The body continued to signal belonging, obedience, and moral alignment. Beauty was redefined, but not abandoned. Looking back, it becomes clear that Roman beauty standards functioned less as a list of traits and more as a system of expectation. They taught people how to read each other, how to evaluate themselves, and how to imagine social order. They shaped behavior quietly, persistently, and often unconsciously. The endurance of this system explains its influence beyond Rome. Medieval, early modern, and even modern Western societies inherited the assumption that appearance matters because it reveals something essential. That assumption did not arise naturally. It was built, reinforced, and normalized over centuries. Ancient Rome offers one of the clearest early examples of this process. By studying how Romans thought about beauty, we gain insight into how societies use the body as a canvas for values. We see how judgment becomes habit, and habit becomes culture. In the end, Roman beauty standards were not about admiration. They were about legibility. A society that depended on hierarchy needed bodies that could be read quickly and confidently. Beauty provided that language, and once learned, that language proved difficult to forget. The sensory experience of beauty in ancient Rome adds yet another dimension to how appearance was understood and evaluated. Beauty was not only visual, it was olfactory, tactile, and even auditory. Smell, in particular, played a powerful role in Roman judgments, perhaps more than in many modern societies. Urban Rome was loud and crowded, filled with the sounds of carts, animals, vendors, and construction. Silence was rare. In this environment, a controlled voice became part of cultivated appearance. Speaking too loudly could signal vulgarity. Speaking too softly could suggest weakness. The trained Roman voice was measured, deliberate, and restrained, reinforcing the broader ideal of bodily control. Smell was even more influential. The city itself produced strong odors. Smoke, refuse, animals, and human waste were constant companions. Against this backdrop, personal scent mattered deeply. Oils and perfumes were not luxuries alone. They were tools for managing social perception. To smell unpleasant was not merely uncomfortable for others. It was socially damaging. Perfumes were layered carefully. Some were applied after bathing, others to clothing, hair, or even furniture. Each carried associations. Certain scents were linked to luxury, others to religious ritual, still others to sexual availability. Choosing the wrong scent could undermine respectability as easily as poor clothing. Yet excessive fragrance was also criticized. A heavily perfumed individual might be accused of trying too hard, of masking something beneath the surface. Once again, moderation was the ideal. Beauty lay in the impression of effortlessness, even when effort was substantial. Touch mattered as well, though it was more tightly regulated. The texture of skin, smoothness, dryness, firmness, was closely associated with health and refinement. Oils softened the skin, while scraping removed imperfections. These practices were not merely hygienic. They shaped how bodies felt to themselves and to others. Clothing contributed to this tactile dimension. Fine fabrics signaled status through feel as much as appearance. The sensation of wearing high-quality garments reinforced social identity internally, not just externally. Beauty was experienced from within the body as well as observed from outside. This internal experience should not be underestimated. Roman beauty standards did not only impose judgment, they shaped self-perception. A well-groomed body felt different. It moved differently, occupied space differently, and interacted with others differently. Over time, these sensations reinforced identity. The relationship between beauty and time also deserves attention. Roman culture placed great emphasis on routine. Grooming followed daily, weekly, and seasonal patterns. Baths were visited regularly. Oils were applied at certain times. Hair was styled and restyled according to fashion cycles. This repetition normalized beauty practices. What might initially have felt artificial became habitual. The body learned its role through repetition, much as the mind learned its values. Beauty was not an occasional performance. It was a continuous process. Festivals and rites of passage intensified this process. Coming-of-age ceremonies, weddings, and funerals involved heightened attention to appearance. These moments marked transitions in social status, and the body had to reflect the change. New hairstyles, garments, or grooming practices signaled new roles. Failure to adapt appearance to these transitions could cause confusion or criticism. A youth who retained childish presentation, or an adult who clung to youthful display, disrupted social expectations. Beauty standards thus helped manage time as well as hierarchy. Roman art captured these temporal shifts subtly. Portraits often represented individuals at specific life stages, emphasizing age-appropriate traits. Youth was idealized differently than maturity. Old age, when depicted, was framed with dignity or moral commentary. The body became a record of time's passage, interpreted through cultural values. The role of memory is also significant. Romans remembered people visually. Descriptions of ancestors emphasized appearance alongside deeds. Wax masks preserved facial features, reinforcing the idea that identity endured through recognizable form. Beauty, or at least physical distinctiveness, contributed to remembrance. This emphasis on memory reinforced the pressure to appear correctly. To be remembered well, one had to look right in life. Appearance became part of legacy. Even death did not fully release the individual from aesthetic judgment. Across all these dimensions, sensory, temporal, emotional, Roman beauty standards reveal remarkable coherence. They consistently privileged control over excess, balance over extremes, legibility over individuality. The body was expected to communicate clearly, reliably, and in alignment with social norms. Yet within this coherence, tension remained. Bodies aged, sickened, and resisted discipline. Materials degraded. Cities decayed. Ideals persisted, but reality pushed back. The history of Roman beauty is thus also a history of negotiation between ideal and lived experience. This negotiation is what makes the subject enduringly relevant. Roman beauty standards were neither arbitrary nor inevitable. They were constructed, maintained, challenged, and adapted over time. They changed because people changed even as they tried to preserve order. In examining these standards, we gain insight not only into Roman society but into the mechanics of cultural judgment itself. We see how values become embodied, how habits become moralized, and how appearance becomes destiny. Ancient Rome offers a powerful case study in how deeply a society can invest meaning in the body. Beauty was not a distraction from serious life. It was one of the ways serious life was organized. And perhaps that is why, centuries later, Roman beauty standards still feel strangely familiar. They remind us that the body has long been more than flesh. It has been a language, spoken silently, read constantly, and rarely forgiven for errors. The relationship between beauty and morality in ancient Rome becomes even clearer when we examine how failure of appearance was discussed. Roman writers did not treat unattractiveness as a neutral condition. It was often framed as a problem requiring explanation. If a body deviated from the expected norm, something had to account for it. Poor discipline, weak character, excessive pleasure, bad ancestry, or divine disfavor. This impulse to explain physical difference reveals how deeply Romans believed that the body was shaped by choices. While fate and birth were acknowledged, personal responsibility loomed large. A neglected appearance implied neglected virtue. A disordered body suggested a disordered mind. This belief placed constant pressure on individuals to present themselves as self-governing. The body became evidence in an unspoken trial. Every wrinkle, scar, or softness invited interpretation. Even features beyond personal control could be moralized after the fact. Roman medical theory supported this logic. Health and appearance were thought to result from balance. Diet, sleep, exercise, sexual moderation, and emotional control all contributed to bodily harmony. When harmony failed, the individual was expected to correct it. Beauty was thus framed as a consequence of proper living. This framework made compassion difficult. Those who could not meet standards due to poverty, illness, or circumstance were still judged by visible outcome rather than hidden cause. Roman society valued resilience, but it also demanded display. Struggle that showed too clearly risked condemnation. At the same time, Roman culture admired endurance. A body that bore hardship without visible collapse earned respect. The difference between honorable suffering and shameful deterioration was often subtle. It depended on narrative, status, and context. Once again, interpretation mattered as much as reality. The visual language of beauty was therefore deeply unstable. It required constant reinforcement through stories, examples, and correction. Families praised certain traits, mocked others, and transmitted judgments across generations. Children learned early which bodies were safe to inhabit and which were dangerous. This learning was rarely explicit. No single text defined beauty standards comprehensively. Instead, they emerged from repetition. What was praised in poetry, idealized in art, rewarded in public life, and criticized in satire. Beauty was everywhere and nowhere at once. The absence of a fixed definition made standards adaptable, but also unforgiving. Because ideals were implicit, failure could not be negotiated openly. One could not argue with a rule that was never written. This ambiguity increased anxiety and encouraged self-policing. Roman humor exploited this anxiety mercilessly. Jokes about baldness, aging, obesity, or cosmetic excess circulated widely. Laughter enforced norms more efficiently than law. To be laughed at was to be exposed, and exposure threatened dignity. Yet humor also provided relief. By exaggerating flaws, satire acknowledged the impossibility of perfection. It allowed society to recognize its own contradictions without resolving them. Beauty standards could be both rigid and absurd at the same time. The experience of soldiers returning from war illustrates this tension vividly. military service damaged bodies. Injuries, illness, and exhaustion altered appearance permanently. Veterans were honored, but reintegration into civilian aesthetic expectations could be difficult. A scar could be noble. Too many scars could be unsettling. Roman society managed this tension by narrating damage as sacrifice. The story surrounding the body mattered. Without the story, the mark might lose its honor. Beauty, once again, depended on context and interpretation. Women experienced a parallel tension in childbirth. Pregnancy altered bodies visibly and permanently. While fertility was valued, the physical consequences were rarely idealized. Mothers were praised for sacrifice, but the marks of that sacrifice did not enhance beauty. The maternal body was respected, but often desexualized. This separation reveals how Roman beauty standards compartmentalized roles. A woman could be admired as a wife, respected as a mother, and criticized as an aging body all at once. These categories did not always align, creating conflicting expectations. The emotional cost of these contradictions appears in Roman literature as irony, bitterness, and resignation. Writers acknowledged the cruelty of time, the fragility of appearance, and the futility of resisting change. Yet they rarely challenged the standards themselves. Instead, they mourned individual failure within an accepted system. This acceptance underscores how deeply beauty standards were internalized. They were not experienced as external impositions but as facts of life. To question them would have required questioning the social order itself. As Rome transitioned into late antiquity, the language of beauty shifted, but its structure remained. Christian authors criticized ornamentation and sensuality, yet they continued to value bodily discipline. The virtuous body was still controlled, restrained, and legible, only now aligned with spiritual goals. Ascetic practices intensified this focus. Fasting, simple dress, and minimal grooming became new markers of moral superiority. The body was still central, still visible, still judged. Beauty was not erased. It was inverted. This inversion did not free individuals from scrutiny. It merely changed what was admired. Excessive thinness, once suspect, could become holy. Neglect, once shameful, could be virtuous. The logic of appearance endured even as its values changed. Looking across Roman history, one pattern remains constant: the refusal to treat the body as private. Appearance was always public, always meaningful. Whether admired, criticized, or moralized, the body functioned as a social text. This understanding helps explain why Roman beauty standards resonate today. Modern societies may reject ancient cosmetics or clothing, but the impulse to read character from appearance persists. We continue to interpret bodies, often unconsciously, using inherited assumptions. Ancient Rome did not invent this impulse, but it systematized it with unusual clarity. By embedding beauty into law, morality, art, and daily routine, Romans created a culture where appearance mattered profoundly and persistently. In studying their standards, we are not merely observing the past. We are confronting the origins of a way of seeing that still shapes modern life. The Roman gaze has not disappeared. It has simply learned new languages. And perhaps the most unsettling realization is this: many of the pressures Romans felt, to look controlled, youthful, balanced, and respectable, are pressures we still recognize. The materials have changed. The mirrors are clearer, but the judgment remains. The geographical spread of the Roman world added further complexity to beauty standards. Rome was not a single city imposing its ideals unchanged across vast territories. provinces adapted Roman expectations to local conditions, creating regional variations that still aligned with a shared visual language of power and respectability. In colder northern provinces, heavier clothing and different grooming habits shaped how bodies appeared. Paleness, once a marker of elite leisure in Italy, could become common across classes due to climate. In warmer regions, sun-darkened skin carried different associations. Yet Roman elites consistently tried to distinguish themselves visually, regardless of environment. This adaptability reveals that beauty standards were less about specific traits and more about differentiation. Elites needed to look distinct from laborers, citizens from non-citizens, insiders from outsiders. When one visual marker lost clarity, another was emphasized. Appearance functioned as a flexible system of signals rather than a fixed checklist. Language reinforced these distinctions. Latin terms describing beauty often carried moral weight. Words for elegance implied restraint. Words for ugliness implied excess or deficiency. The vocabulary itself shaped perception, guiding how bodies were described and remembered. Roman poets were especially attentive to this language. Their verses cataloged features: eyes, skin, hair, posture, not merely to admire but to judge. Praise and criticism were intertwined. To be beautiful was to meet expectations. To fall short was to invite narrative correction. Time, however, undermined even the most disciplined body. Roman awareness of mortality permeated discussions of beauty. Writers frequently reminded readers that youth fades and flesh decays. These reminders were not calls for liberation from standards, but warnings against complacency. Enjoy beauty, they suggested, but do not trust it. This ambivalence produced a distinctive Roman tone, appreciative yet suspicious. Beauty was admired, cultivated, and displayed, but never fully celebrated without restraint. Excessive attachment was portrayed as foolish. Detachment, however, risked appearing negligent. The ideal lay in careful balance. The metaphor of cultivation recurs frequently. The body was likened to land requiring care. Neglect led to decay. Overindulgence led to imbalance. This metaphor framed beauty as labor. Effort was expected, but it had to remain invisible. This invisibility mattered greatly. A well-maintained appearance was supposed to look natural, not manufactured. Visible effort undermined credibility. Cosmetics had to blend seamlessly. Hair arrangements had to appear effortless, even when complex. The highest praise was that beauty seemed innate. Such expectations placed enormous strain on individuals, particularly women. The demand to appear naturally perfect while hiding labor created a paradox that could never be fully resolved. Failure was always possible and often publicly noticed. Public commentary amplified this risk. Roman society thrived on observation. Markets, baths, theaters, and streets were spaces of constant visual exchange. People watched and were watched. Reputation circulated quickly, shaped by small details. This circulation created feedback loops. What was praised spread. What was mocked faded or adapted. Beauty standards evolved through countless micro-interactions rather than centralized authority. The result was a living system, responsive yet conservative. As centuries passed, this system accumulated layers. Republican ideals emphasizing austerity blended with imperial tastes for luxury. Greek aesthetics merged with Roman pragmatism. Local customs filtered into metropolitan fashion. Beauty standards became palimpsests, carrying traces of earlier values beneath newer ones. Even during decline, these layers persisted. Late Roman authors lamented lost simplicity while continuing to care deeply about appearance. Nostalgia itself became part of the aesthetic, favoring imagined past virtues over present realities. When Rome's political structures fragmented, its visual habits did not vanish. Successor societies inherited them selectively. The emphasis on discipline, legibility, and moralized appearance survived, reshaped by new religious and cultural frameworks. In this sense, Roman beauty standards were not an isolated phenomenon. They were a foundation. Later European ideals of respectability, modesty, and bodily control drew heavily from Roman precedent, often without conscious awareness. Studying Roman beauty, therefore, reveals more than ancient preferences. It exposes the mechanics by which societies teach people how to look, how to judge, and how to judge themselves. It shows how appearance becomes a shared language, powerful precisely because it feels unspoken. Ancient Rome demonstrates that beauty standards endure not because they are correct, but because they are useful. They simplify complexity, enforce order, and make hierarchy visible. They allow societies to function smoothly, even when they harm individuals. This dual nature, functional yet costly, explains both their persistence and their controversy. Romans lived with these standards as we do with our own, aware of their pressure, yet rarely imagining life without them. As we step back from Roman history, the lesson is not that their standards were cruel or misguided, though they often were. The lesson is that beauty has rarely been optional. It has been woven into how societies organize themselves. Ancient Rome offers one of the earliest and most detailed records of this process. Through law, art, medicine, and daily habit, Romans turned appearance into a moral and social instrument. In listening to their story, we are invited to recognize echoes in our own world. The mirrors have changed. The judgments have not. The question of resistance to Roman beauty standards is subtle because open rejection was rare. Instead of outright rebellion, most resistance took the form of negotiation, irony, or quiet withdrawal. Individuals found small ways to distance themselves from expectations without directly confronting them. Philosophical schools offered one such space. Stoic writers, for example, argued that external appearance should not determine inner worth. They emphasized self-mastery of the mind over the body. Yet even Stoics did not entirely reject bodily discipline. They still valued cleanliness, restraint, and order. What they rejected was emotional dependence on appearance, not appearance itself. Epicureans similarly downplayed the importance of visual display, promoting pleasure understood as absence of disturbance rather than indulgence. But again, this did not translate into neglect. A calm, orderly body remained desirable. Philosophy softened the emotional grip of beauty standards without dismantling their structure. Literature provided another outlet. Poets sometimes celebrated unconventional features or mocked rigid ideals. These moments, however, functioned more as rhetorical play than as social critique. They acknowledged deviation without legitimizing it. The ideal remained intact, even when temporarily inverted for artistic effect. Private retreat also served as a form of resistance. Some Romans withdrew from public life, minimizing exposure to judgment. Rural villas, philosophical study, and reduced participation in civic rituals allowed individuals to escape constant scrutiny. Yet such withdrawal was itself a privilege, unavailable to most. For women, resistance was even more constrained. Their appearance was so closely tied to family honor that deviation carried risks beyond personal reputation. Silence, invisibility, and conformity were often safer than experimentation. The system endured partly because the cost of deviation was unevenly distributed. The endurance of Roman beauty standards also depended on their ability to absorb criticism. Moralists complained about excess, yet rarely proposed abolition. Their critiques refined the ideal rather than replacing it. Excess was condemned so that moderation could be preserved. This self-correcting quality made the system resilient. Beauty standards evolved through internal critique rather than collapse. When one form of display was attacked, another emerged, framed as more authentic or virtuous. Over generations, these adjustments accumulated. Hairstyles changed, cosmetics shifted, clothing styles adapted. Yet the underlying logic, appearance as a reflection of order, remained stable. Archaeological evidence supports this continuity. Grooming tools, cosmetic containers, mirrors, and jewelry appear across centuries, even as styles change. The persistence of these objects suggests that attention to appearance was not a passing fashion but a durable practice. The domestic archaeology of Roman houses reinforces this picture. Private spaces dedicated to grooming were common, especially among elites. Mirrors and cosmetic tools were kept close, indicating daily use. Beauty was not reserved for special occasions. It was routine. The role of time investment cannot be overstated. Maintaining appearance required hours each week. This time was unequally distributed. Those with servants could devote effort to refinement. Those without could not. Beauty thus functioned as visible proof of leisure. Leisure itself was moralized. Roman culture admired productive leisure, time spent cultivating the self in ways aligned with social values. Grooming, when done correctly, could be framed as responsible self-management rather than vanity. This framing allowed beauty practices to coexist with moral seriousness. A well-presented body suggested that an individual took their role seriously. Neglect implied disrespect toward oneself and others. The emotional weight of this expectation emerges in Roman discussions of shame. Shame was not only about wrongdoing, it was about being seen incorrectly. Exposure, whether literal or metaphorical, threatened dignity. Beauty standards provided a shield against shame by aligning appearance with expectation. Failure of that shield could be devastating. Public mockery, loss of reputation, or quiet exclusion all carried lasting consequences. The fear of such outcomes encouraged conformity even when ideals felt burdensome. As the empire aged, demographic change altered the experience of beauty. Urban populations became more diverse. Economic instability increased. Maintaining ideal appearance became harder. Yet rather than loosening standards, this often intensified judgment. Scarcity sharpened distinction. Late Roman texts reflect this tension. Writers lamented declining standards, blaming moral decay for visible deterioration. Beauty became a symbol of lost order, even as material conditions made its maintenance increasingly difficult. This nostalgia reveals how deeply appearance was linked to identity. To imagine Rome in decline was to imagine bodies failing to meet ideals. Beauty standards thus became a way of narrating history itself. When Christian ideals gained dominance, they reframed this narrative. The visible body was no longer the primary measure of worth. Yet the impulse to read morality from appearance persisted. Modesty, simplicity, and bodily restraint replaced ornamentation as new ideals. This shift did not eliminate beauty standards. It transformed them. The virtuous body was still recognizable, still disciplined, still legible. The language changed, but the gaze remained. Across all these transformations, one theme remains constant. Roman society treated the body as meaningful. Appearance was never incidental. It was a medium through which values were communicated and enforced. This understanding helps explain why Roman beauty standards are so extensively documented. Writers noticed them because they mattered. Artists depicted them because they communicated identity. Law and custom reinforced them because they stabilized hierarchy. In the end, Roman beauty standards were not about perfection. They were about predictability. A society spanning vast territories and diverse populations needed shared visual cues. Beauty provided those cues. Studying these standards reveals how societies turn bodies into symbols. It shows how ideals migrate from art to habit, from habit to judgment, from judgment to identity. Ancient Rome did this with remarkable thoroughness. Its legacy is not a single look or style, but a way of thinking about appearance as destiny. And as long as bodies continue to be read as evidence of character, that legacy endures. The final layer to consider is how Roman beauty standards shaped self-awareness itself. Over time, constant exposure to judgment trained individuals to observe themselves as others might. The Roman body was not only presented outwardly, it was monitored inwardly. People learned to anticipate reactions before they occurred, adjusting posture, expression, and behavior in advance. This anticipatory self-regulation created a culture of vigilance. A Roman did not simply appear in public. They arrived already measured against expectation. The body became a site of rehearsal, where gestures were refined and expressions moderated long before an audience was present. Such vigilance blurred the line between authenticity and performance. When appearance is constantly managed, it becomes difficult to distinguish the self from the presentation. Roman writers occasionally hinted at this discomfort, questioning whether virtue could exist independently of display. Yet these moments rarely led to change. The system absorbed doubt without dissolving. This internalization explains why beauty standards persisted even without strict enforcement. Once learned, they operated automatically. People corrected themselves, compared themselves, and judged themselves using inherited criteria. External pressure became internal habit. This habit extended across generations. Children born into Roman culture encountered beauty standards before they could articulate them. Through imitation and correction, they learned what was acceptable. By adulthood, these lessons felt natural, not imposed. Even those who consciously rejected vanity often remained shaped by its logic. A philosopher who dismissed ornament still valued composure. An ascetic who renounced luxury still disciplined the body. The form of control changed, but control itself remained. The Roman experience thus illustrates how deeply aesthetic norms can penetrate consciousness. Beauty standards did not merely influence fashion or grooming. They structured perception. They taught people what to notice, what to ignore, and what to fear. Fear played a subtle but persistent role. Fear of ridicule, fear of exclusion, fear of misinterpretation. These fears rarely appeared as explicit threats. They operated quietly, guiding choices and shaping behavior. Beauty standards endured because they were reinforced emotionally as much as socially. At the same time, Romans were not unaware of this pressure. Their literature is filled with reflections on impermanence, deception, and illusion. Writers warned that beauty fades, that appearances mislead, that judgment is cruel. These warnings suggest recognition, even if acceptance followed. This tension between awareness and acceptance defines the Roman relationship with beauty. They knew its limits, yet relied on it. They criticized excess, yet pursued refinement. They acknowledged decay, yet clung to youth. Such contradictions are not signs of confusion. They are signs of a system deeply embedded in social life. Beauty standards survived because they accommodated doubt while maintaining structure. When we reach the end of the Roman story, what remains is not a catalog of hairstyles or cosmetics, but a pattern. The pattern shows how societies transform appearance into meaning and meaning into obligation. It shows how the body becomes a mirror not only of the self, but of the social order. Ancient Rome did not invent beauty, nor did it invent judgment. What it did was integrate appearance into nearly every aspect of life: law, morality, art, family, memory. Beauty became a connective tissue linking private experience to public identity. This integration ensured durability. Even as Rome's political power faded, its aesthetic logic endured. Later cultures inherited not Roman styles, but Roman assumptions. That bodies should be readable, that restraint is virtuous, that appearance signals worth. Understanding Roman beauty standards therefore helps us understand ourselves. It reveals how deeply the past informs the present, often invisibly. The standards that feel intuitive today have long histories, shaped by cultures that asked similar questions and reached similar conclusions. The Roman answer was clear: the body matters because society needs it to matter. Beauty standards provided a way to organize diversity, enforce hierarchy, and maintain order. They were not kind, but they were effective. In listening to this history, we are not asked to admire Roman ideals or condemn them outright. We are asked to recognize their influence, to see how easily appearance becomes destiny, and how quietly judgment becomes habit. Ancient Rome reminds us that beauty is never just about beauty. It is about power, control, and belonging. And as long as societies rely on visible cues to make sense of themselves, the Roman legacy will remain with us. What ultimately distinguishes Roman beauty standards from many later traditions is how openly they accepted judgment as an ordinary part of life. There was little expectation that one could escape being evaluated. Privacy as a moral concept was limited. To exist within Roman society was to be visible, and visibility invited interpretation. This acceptance shaped social resilience. Romans learned not only to endure judgment, but to anticipate it. Appearance became a skill to be managed, refined, and deployed. Those who mastered this skill gained confidence and influence. Those who did not were often marginalized without formal exclusion. This dynamic encouraged conformity, but it also rewarded competence. Beauty standards were demanding, yet predictable. One could learn them, imitate them, and succeed within their bounds. This predictability made the system seem fair, even when it was not. The illusion of fairness was crucial. Because standards were shared, failure appeared personal rather than structural. An individual who did not meet expectations was assumed to have failed in discipline or effort. Structural barriers, poverty, illness, circumstance were rarely acknowledged. This framing protected the system from critique. If beauty was attainable through effort, then inequality appeared justified. Those who succeeded were admired. Those who failed were corrected or ignored. Appearance thus became a moral economy. The Roman emphasis on exemplars reinforced this economy. Public figures were presented as models of proper appearance and conduct. Their portraits circulated widely, teaching others how a respectable body should look. These images were less about likeness than instruction. Over time, this visual pedagogy shaped collective memory. When Romans imagined virtue, they pictured a certain kind of body. When they imagined decay, they pictured its opposite. Beauty standards thus influenced not only daily judgment but historical imagination. This influence extended to how Romans understood foreigners and enemies. Bodies outside Roman norms were often described in exaggerated terms. Too hairy, too thin, too excessive, too uncontrolled. These descriptions justified domination by framing difference as deficiency. Even admiration of foreign beauty was carefully controlled. Exotic features could be praised, but rarely without reinforcing Roman superiority. Beauty could be acknowledged without granting equality. The visual language of power remained intact. Within Rome itself, this language softened only at the margins. Old age, disability, and poverty could be accommodated through narratives of endurance or sacrifice, but rarely celebrated. The ideal body remained youthful, balanced, and controlled, even when few possessed it. The gap between ideal and reality widened as the empire aged. Economic strain reduced access to baths, oils, and skilled labor. Urban infrastructure declined. Bodies bore more visible signs of hardship. Yet ideals persisted, producing a sense of collective failure. Late Roman writers often framed this failure nostalgically. They imagined a past where bodies were healthier, manners stricter, and beauty more attainable. This imagined past served as a moral benchmark, even if it never fully existed. Nostalgia itself became an aesthetic. Simplicity, restraint, and imagined authenticity were praised, not because they were present, but because they symbolized order. Beauty standards thus shifted from present aspiration to remembered ideal. This shift did not weaken their influence. If anything, it strengthened it. Ideals located safely in the past could not be challenged by current reality. They became unquestionable standards rather than achievable goals. As Roman institutions dissolved, Christian communities inherited both the pressure and the nostalgia. They redirected beauty toward spiritual ends, but retained the logic of bodily discipline. The body was still trained, still observed, still judged. In monasteries and ascetic circles, extreme bodily practices emerged. Fasting, plain dress, and physical hardship became new signs of virtue. Beauty was rejected in name, yet the body remained central as a moral instrument. This paradox underscores a crucial point. Roman beauty standards were not about aesthetics alone. They were about control. Who controls the body controls meaning. Who defines beauty defines belonging. This insight helps explain why Roman standards left such a deep imprint. They aligned appearance with social order so effectively that later cultures found it easier to adapt the system than to dismantle it. Looking back across the centuries, the Roman body appears as both subject and object, self-aware yet constrained, disciplined yet anxious. Beauty standards shaped how Romans moved through the world and how they understood themselves. They also shaped how Rome is remembered. Our images of Romans, stoic statesmen, composed matrons, disciplined soldiers, are filtered through the very standards they created. History itself is colored by Roman aesthetics. This realization invites caution. When we study Roman beauty, we are reading a curated record. Bodies that did not fit the ideal are underrepresented, mocked, or erased. The silence around them is part of the story. Yet even within this silence, the pressure is audible. It speaks through anxiety, satire, nostalgia, and moral instruction. It reminds us that beauty standards are rarely neutral reflections of preference. They are active forces shaping lives. Ancient Rome offers a lesson in endurance. not endurance of beauty, but endurance of judgment. Romans lived with constant evaluation and learned to survive it. They adapted, negotiated, and internalized standards that rarely relaxed. In doing so, they created a culture where appearance mattered deeply and persistently. A culture where the body was never just a body, but a statement about discipline, belonging, and worth. As modern listeners, we may feel distance from Roman cosmetics or clothing, but not from Roman anxiety. The fear of being misread, excluded, or diminished through appearance remains familiar. This continuity does not mean that change is impossible. It means that change requires awareness. By understanding how Roman beauty standards operated, we gain tools to recognize similar mechanisms today. History does not offer simple solutions, but it offers clarity. Rome shows us what happens when appearance becomes a moral language, how it organizes society, and how it limits compassion. In the end, the Roman story of beauty is not a story of vanity. It is a story of visibility. To be seen was to be judged. To be judged was to belong or not belong. And that, more than any cosmetic or hairstyle, was the true standard of beauty in ancient Rome. When we step back and observe Roman beauty standards as a whole, a final pattern becomes unmistakable. Beauty functioned as a form of social literacy. To navigate Roman life successfully, one had to understand how bodies were read, what signs mattered, and how quickly judgment formed. This literacy was not optional. It was learned through observation, correction, and repetition. Those who mastered this visual language could move more easily through social spaces. They knew how to present themselves at the baths, how to dress for public appearances, how to age acceptably, and how to balance grooming with restraint. Mastery did not guarantee admiration, but it reduced risk. In a society where reputation was fragile, reducing risk was itself a form of success. This risk management explains why beauty standards endured even when they caused discomfort. They offered predictability in an uncertain world. Rome was vast, crowded, and unequal. Appearance provided a quick way to assess others when deeper knowledge was unavailable. It simplified social interaction, even as it distorted reality. Yet simplification came at a cost. Individuals became types. Bodies were sorted into categories that left little room for complexity. A person might be generous, intelligent, or loyal, but if their appearance failed to align with expectation, those qualities could be overlooked. Beauty standards narrowed perception. Roman texts occasionally hint at this loss. Moments of compassion appear when writers acknowledge the cruelty of judging by surfaces. But such moments rarely challenged the system. They remained exceptions that proved the rule. The strength of Roman beauty standards lay in their subtlety. They did not require constant enforcement because they were woven into habit. People learned them early and practiced them daily. Correction was often quiet. A glance, a joke, a withdrawal of respect. These small signals accumulated powerfully over time. This quiet enforcement made resistance difficult to sustain. Open defiance invited ridicule or exclusion. Subtle deviation might go unnoticed, but rarely reshaped norms. As a result, most Romans adapted rather than rebelled. Adaptation did not mean agreement. Many lived with ambivalence, managing appearance while privately doubting its value. This tension appears in personal writings, where individuals express fatigue with aging, frustration with judgment, or resignation toward time's effects. Yet these reflections rarely translated into change. Change, when it came, occurred slowly and indirectly. Shifts in religion, economy, and governance altered how beauty was framed, but not its importance. The Roman system proved flexible enough to absorb transformation without losing its core logic. This durability explains why Roman beauty standards influenced later societies so profoundly. Medieval and early modern Europe inherited not Roman fashions, but Roman assumptions. That appearance communicates virtue, that restraint signals worth, that bodies should be legible. Even modern discomfort with judgment by appearance often relies on Roman logic. We criticize superficiality, yet continue to interpret bodies as evidence. We reject vanity, yet reward controlled presentation. The contradiction itself is Roman in spirit. Understanding this lineage does not free us from it automatically, but it does offer perspective. Roman beauty standards remind us that what feels natural is often learned, and what feels personal is often cultural. In ancient Rome, beauty was not about pleasure alone. It was about order. It helped a complex society function by making people readable to one another. In doing so, it constrained individuality and normalized inequality. The Roman body was never just a private possession. It belonged to family, class, city, and state. Its appearance carried obligations. To look right was to participate correctly in society. To look wrong was to risk misunderstanding or exclusion. This reality shaped Roman identity deeply. People did not merely live in Rome. They embodied Rome. Their bodies reflected its values, tensions, and contradictions. As we conclude this long examination, one truth stands out. Roman beauty standards were powerful not because they promised perfection, but because they promised belonging. To meet expectations was to be recognized, accepted, and understood. That promise, even when imperfectly fulfilled, was enough to sustain the system for centuries. Ancient Rome shows us that beauty standards endure when they offer social meaning, not just aesthetic pleasure. They survive when they become tools for navigation rather than ideals for admiration. In listening to this history, we are invited to see beauty differently, not as a set of traits, but as a language. A language learned, practiced, and rarely questioned. And once learned, such a language does not disappear easily. If there is one final lens through which Roman beauty standards can be understood, it is endurance. Not endurance as physical strength alone, but endurance as psychological adaptation. Romans learned to live with constant evaluation, to shape themselves around it, and to survive within its limits. This endurance was not heroic. It was ordinary. It existed in daily routines, repeated gestures, habitual grooming, and careful presentation. It was learned quietly and practiced consistently. Over time, it became invisible, mistaken for nature rather than culture. Roman beauty standards did not require enthusiasm. They required compliance. One did not need to admire them to live by them. One needed only to recognize their power and adjust accordingly. In this sense, beauty functioned less as an aspiration than as a condition. This conditioning shaped how Romans understood success and failure. Success was not merely achievement. It was alignment. To succeed was to appear appropriate at the right moment, in the right setting, among the right people. Failure often took the form of misalignment, looking out of place, aging incorrectly, displaying the wrong degree of care. These misalignments were rarely catastrophic on their own. More often, they accumulated. A reputation eroded slowly through small deviations, unnoticed by the individual but observed by others. Beauty standards worked through accumulation rather than confrontation. This slow erosion made correction difficult. By the time someone sensed exclusion, the cause was often diffuse. could not be pointed to a single act or choice. Appearance had already spoken. Roman social life thus rewarded vigilance. Those who monitored themselves carefully reduced the risk of gradual decline. This vigilance extended beyond grooming to posture, expression, tone, and timing. Beauty was holistic, encompassing the entire visible self. The cost of this vigilance was fatigue. Roman texts occasionally reveal exhaustion with maintaining appearances, particularly among the aging. The effort required to remain legible increased as the body resisted discipline. Aging was not only physical change, it was rising effort for diminishing return. Yet even this fatigue did not dissolve standards. It reinforced them. The difficulty of maintaining appearance became proof of its value. What required effort was deemed important. What could not be sustained was framed as failure rather than liberation. This logic persists in many cultures. The Roman example shows how deeply effort can be moralized. Struggle becomes virtue. Ease becomes suspicion. Beauty, when difficult, is taken more seriously. The Roman legacy also lies in how beauty standards intersected with silence. Those most affected by judgment, women, the poor, the disabled, the enslaved, left fewer records. Their experiences must be inferred from criticism, regulation, and absence. Silence itself becomes evidence of pressure. This absence reminds us that beauty standards do not impact everyone equally. They concentrate power among those already advantaged. In Rome, elites could shape ideals while benefiting from the resources required to meet them. Others bore the weight without voice. Understanding this asymmetry is essential. Roman beauty standards were not simply cultural preferences. They were mechanisms of control. They distributed dignity unevenly, rewarding some bodies while marginalizing others. At the same time, individuals were not passive. They adapted creatively within constraints. Hairstyles were adjusted, clothing modified, grooming simplified or exaggerated depending on context. People negotiated standards rather than merely submitting to them. These negotiations, however, rarely challenged the system itself. They occurred within its logic. To negotiate beauty was to accept its authority. The framework remained intact. This acceptance explains why Roman beauty standards feel so complete in historical record. They were not contested as a system. They were assumed. Even criticism aimed to correct excess, not dismantle expectation. In the modern imagination, this completeness can feel alien. We often assume that standards must be questioned to be powerful. Rome shows the opposite. Standards are most powerful when they feel inevitable. The Roman world treated appearance as destiny not because Romans were superficial, but because they were practical. In a society without modern bureaucracy, visual cues mattered. Bodies carried information that documents could not. This practicality does not excuse harm, but it explains endurance. Beauty standards survived because they solved problems for those in power, even as they created problems for others. As listeners today, we stand at a distance that allows reflection. We can see how Roman beauty standards shaped lives without assuming they were natural or necessary. We can recognize their influence without repeating their logic unquestioned. History, in this sense, offers a mirror, not to admire or condemn reflexively, but to observe patterns. Rome shows how easily appearance becomes moral language and how difficult it is to unlearn once embedded. The Roman story of beauty ends not with collapse, but with transformation. Its standards did not disappear. They migrated. They entered new religions, new states, new philosophies. They changed shape but not function. To understand ancient Rome, then, is to understand a world where beauty was never innocent, never private, and never trivial. It was a social instrument, refined over centuries, used to organize life. And in recognizing that, we gain clarity about our own world. The past does not accuse us. It explains us. At the very end of this long inquiry, what ancient Rome ultimately teaches us about beauty is not how people looked, but how societies teach people to look at themselves. Roman beauty standards were a system of attention. They trained individuals to notice certain features, ignore others, and interpret bodies according to shared expectations. This training began early and never truly ended. From childhood onward, Romans learned where attention should rest: on skin tone, posture, hair, age, restraint. These focal points shaped perception so thoroughly that alternative ways of seeing became difficult to imagine. Beauty was not discovered, it was learned. Because it was learned, it felt objective. Romans rarely described beauty as a personal preference. Instead, they spoke of it as though it were self-evident. A body either appeared correct or it did not. This apparent obviousness gave beauty standards authority without requiring justification. Authority, once internalized, rarely needs enforcement. Roman society relied on this internalization. People adjusted themselves preemptively, reducing the need for overt correction. Judgment happened quietly, through comparison rather than command. This quiet process is one reason Roman beauty standards endured across centuries of change. Political systems shifted, borders moved, religions transformed, but the habit of reading bodies persisted. Appearance remained a trusted source of meaning even when other structures failed. The Roman example reveals that beauty standards are most powerful when they align with broader values. In Rome, restraint, order, hierarchy, and discipline were central virtues. Beauty mirrored these virtues. A controlled body symbolized a controlled society. When ideals align this way, they become difficult to challenge. To question beauty standards would have meant questioning Roman order itself. Few were willing or able to do so. Instead, people adapted, negotiated, and endured. This endurance produced a culture of constant self-measurement. Romans measured themselves against ideals that were always slightly out of reach. This gap generated effort, anxiety, and conformity. It also generated continuity. Each generation inherited the same standards and passed them on. Continuity did not require agreement. It required repetition. Daily grooming, public appearance, private correction. These small acts sustained the system more effectively than ideology ever could. Over time, beauty standards became part of Roman common sense. They felt as natural as language. And like language, they structured thought itself. To imagine a respectable person was to imagine a certain kind of body. This imaginative constraint shaped Roman history as much as law or war. Leaders rose and fell not only through action but through appearance. Reputations were built and damaged visually. Power itself acquired a look. Even resistance took visual form. Philosophers rejected ornament but embraced simplicity. Ascetics rejected beauty but embraced discipline. The body remained central even when de-emphasized. In this sense, Roman beauty standards were never about admiration alone. They were about coordination. They helped millions of people navigate shared space with minimal explanation. They reduced uncertainty by turning bodies into signals. But signals simplify, and simplification erases nuance. Individuals who did not conform, through no fault of their own, were often misread. Their complexity was flattened into visible difference. This cost was rarely acknowledged openly. It remained an undercurrent, visible only in satire, anxiety, and silence. Yet it shaped lives profoundly. Ancient Rome does not offer us a moral resolution. It offers us a case study. It shows how beauty standards emerge, stabilize, and persist. It shows how they become invisible through familiarity. And it shows that once beauty becomes a moral language, it is extraordinarily difficult to unlearn. As modern listeners, we may recognize pieces of ourselves in this story. The concern with aging, the effort to appear effortless, the fear of misinterpretation, all feel familiar. The distance between Rome and the present narrows here. This recognition is not an accusation. It is an invitation. By understanding how Roman beauty standards worked, we gain awareness of how similar systems operate today. Awareness does not dissolve pressure, but it creates space for reflection. Rome reminds us that beauty standards are historical. They were created, maintained, and transmitted. And what is created can, in principle, be changed. Yet history also teaches humility. Systems that endure for centuries do so because they serve deep social functions. Changing them requires more than rejection. It requires reimagining how societies assign value. The Romans never fully escaped their standards. They lived within them, shaped by them, and passed them on. Their story is not one of liberation or failure, but of adaptation. In the end, Roman beauty standards mattered because Rome believed that bodies mattered. Appearance was not superficial, it was foundational. It organized identity, hierarchy, and belonging. To study this is not to fixate on ancient cosmetics or hairstyles. It is to study how humans live under constant observation and how they learn to survive it. That lesson, quiet and enduring, may be Rome's most lasting contribution to the history of beauty. If we treat Roman beauty standards as a historical system rather than a collection of preferences, one final implication becomes clear. They train people not only to judge others, but to accept judgment as normal. This acceptance reshaped emotional life. Feelings such as embarrassment, pride, confidence, and shame were closely tied to how one appeared at any given moment. Shame, in particular, occupied a central role. It was not limited to moral failure. It emerged from misalignment, being seen at the wrong moment in the wrong condition without the proper signals of control. Roman shame was often visual before it was ethical. One felt exposed before one felt guilty. This visual shame encouraged anticipation. Romans learned to manage themselves in advance, minimizing the risk of exposure. The result was a society skilled in concealment. Imperfections were hidden, effort disguised, decline softened when possible. Beauty standards did not demand perfection. They demanded management. Management, however, required constant attention. The Roman self was never fully at rest. Even in private, the habits of presentation lingered. Grooming routines, bodily discipline, and emotional control continued behind closed doors. The boundary between public and private was porous. This permeability explains why Roman beauty standards could feel exhausting. They did not end when an audience left. They followed individuals into domestic life, into aging, into illness. The gaze of society was internalized so deeply that solitude offered limited relief. Yet within this pressure, Romans also found meaning. To present oneself correctly was to participate in a shared world. Appearance became a way of signaling respect for others, for tradition, for order. Beauty standards were burdensome, but they also provided orientation. This dual function, oppressive yet stabilizing, helps explain their longevity. Systems that only harm rarely endure. Roman beauty standards endured because they solved problems, even as they created them. They offered predictability in a complex social environment. Predictability mattered deeply in Rome. The empire brought together people of different languages, customs, and beliefs. Shared visual norms helped bridge these differences. A recognizable appearance signaled participation in Roman life, even when deeper integration was incomplete. Thus, beauty standards functioned as a cultural shorthand. They allowed strangers to interact with minimal explanation. They reduced uncertainty by offering visible cues. In doing so, they reinforced belonging for some and exclusion for others. This exclusion was rarely explicit. It occurred through omission rather than decree. Those who did not fit were overlooked, underestimated, or quietly sidelined. Beauty standards rarely announced themselves as barriers. They simply shaped outcomes. The Roman reliance on appearance also influenced how failure was understood. When individuals struggled, the cause was often attributed to personal deficiency rather than structural constraint. This attribution protected existing hierarchies by framing inequality as natural. Such framing is not unique to Rome, but Rome offers one of its earliest and clearest expressions. The Roman body was both product and proof of social order. To question its meaning was to question the order itself. This explains why Roman beauty standards were rarely debated openly. They were embedded too deeply. Even critics accepted their premises. They argued about excess, not legitimacy. As centuries passed, these premises migrated into new contexts. Medieval Europe inherited the idea that bodies should reflect inner order. Renaissance humanism revived classical ideals of proportion and balance. Modern Western societies inherited the expectation that appearance communicates worth. The Roman contribution lies in how thoroughly these ideas were integrated. Beauty was not an isolated domain. It intersected with law, religion, medicine, family, and memory. It was part of the infrastructure of life. Understanding this integration helps demystify beauty standards today. They often feel personal, emotional, and inevitable. Roman history shows that they are cultural constructions, maintained through habit rather than necessity. This recognition does not diminish their power. It explains it. Systems that feel natural are the hardest to change. Rome's beauty standards survived precisely because they felt obvious to those living within them. For modern listeners, the value of this history lies in perspective. We are not meant to judge Romans harshly or admire them uncritically. We are meant to see how easily societies turn appearance into meaning and meaning into obligation. Ancient Rome demonstrates that beauty standards are not superficial distractions from serious life. They are part of how serious life is organized. They determine who is heard, who is trusted, and who is remembered. In the Roman world, to be seen correctly was to exist securely. To be misread was to risk marginalization. This reality shaped daily behavior more reliably than abstract ideals. As we reach the end of this long examination, the picture that remains is quiet rather than dramatic. Roman beauty standards did not shout. They whispered. They worked through repetition, expectation, and habit. They asked Romans to endure being seen, to adapt to judgment, and to carry their bodies carefully through the world. In doing so, they shaped a civilization's sense of order. And in listening to their story, we are reminded that the history of beauty is not a history of fashion. It is a history of how humans learn to live under observation. That lesson, more than any specific Roman ideal, continues to matter. If we treat Roman beauty standards as a historical system rather than a collection of preferences, one final implication becomes clear. They train people not only to judge others, but to accept judgment as normal. This acceptance reshaped emotional life. Feelings such as embarrassment, pride, confidence, and shame were closely tied to how one appeared at any given moment. Shame, in particular, occupied a central role. It was not limited to moral failure. It emerged from misalignment, being seen at the wrong moment in the wrong condition without the proper signals of control. Roman shame was often visual before it was ethical. One felt exposed before one felt guilty. This visual shame encouraged anticipation. Romans learned to manage themselves in advance, minimizing the risk of exposure. The result was a society skilled in concealment. Imperfections were hidden, effort disguised, decline softened when possible. Beauty standards did not demand perfection. They demanded management. Management, however, required constant attention. The Roman self was never fully at rest. Even in private, the habits of presentation lingered. Grooming routines, bodily discipline, and emotional control continued behind closed doors. The boundary between public and private was porous. This permeability explains why Roman beauty standards could feel exhausting. They did not end when an audience left. They followed individuals into domestic life, into aging, into illness. The gaze of society was internalized so deeply that solitude offered limited relief. Yet within this pressure, Romans also found meaning. To present oneself correctly was to participate in a shared world. Appearance became a way of signaling respect for others, for tradition, for order. Beauty standards were burdensome, but they also provided orientation. This dual function, oppressive yet stabilizing, helps explain their longevity. Systems that only harm rarely endure. Roman beauty standards endured because they solved problems, even as they created them. They offered predictability in a complex social environment. Predictability mattered deeply in Rome. The empire brought together people of different languages, customs, and beliefs. Shared visual norms helped bridge these differences. A recognizable appearance signaled participation in Roman life, even when deeper integration was incomplete. Thus, beauty standards functioned as a cultural shorthand. They allowed strangers to interact with minimal explanation. They reduced uncertainty by offering visible cues. In doing so, they reinforced belonging for some and exclusion for others. This exclusion was rarely explicit. It occurred through omission rather than decree. Those who did not fit were overlooked, underestimated, or quietly sidelined. Beauty standards rarely announced themselves as barriers. They simply shaped outcomes. The Roman reliance on appearance also influenced how failure was understood. When individuals struggled, the cause was often attributed to personal deficiency rather than structural constraint. This attribution protected existing hierarchies by framing inequality as natural. Such framing is not unique to Rome, but Rome offers one of its earliest and clearest expressions. The Roman body was both product and proof of social order. To question its meaning was to question the order itself. This explains why Roman beauty standards were rarely debated openly. They were embedded too deeply. Even critics accepted their premises. They argued about excess, not legitimacy. As centuries passed, these premises migrated into new contexts. Medieval Europe inherited the idea that bodies should reflect inner order. Renaissance humanism revived classical ideals of proportion and balance. Modern Western societies inherited the expectation that appearance communicates worth. The Roman contribution lies in how thoroughly these ideas were integrated. Beauty was not an isolated domain. It intersected with law, religion, medicine, family, and memory. It was part of the infrastructure of life. Understanding this integration helps demystify beauty standards today. They often feel personal, emotional, and inevitable. Roman history shows that they are cultural constructions, maintained through habit rather than necessity. This recognition does not diminish their power. It explains it. Systems that feel natural are the hardest to change. Rome's beauty standards survived precisely because they felt obvious to those living within them. For modern listeners, the value of this history lies in perspective. We are not meant to judge Romans harshly or admire them uncritically. We are meant to see how easily societies turn appearance into meaning, and meaning into obligation. Ancient Rome demonstrates that beauty standards are not superficial distractions from serious life. They are part of how serious life is organized. They determine who is heard, who is trusted, and who is remembered. In the Roman world, to be seen correctly was to exist securely. To be misread was to risk marginalization. This reality shaped daily behavior more reliably than abstract ideals. When Roman beauty standards are viewed through the lens of everyday endurance, one last transformation becomes visible. Over time, judgment ceased to feel external and became internal orientation. Romans did not merely fear how others saw them. They learned to see themselves through the same evaluative frame. The self became an observer of the self. This inward turn reshaped conscience. Moral reflection was often visual. A Roman asked not only, "Have I acted correctly?" but also, "Have I appeared correct?" The two questions overlapped so thoroughly that separating them became difficult. Appearance did not replace ethics. It merged with it. This merger had practical effects. Self-correction happened before social correction could occur. A person adjusted clothing, posture, or expression instinctively, guided by an internalized sense of how they ought to look. The gaze of society lived on inside the individual. Such internalization reduced conflict. Fewer rules needed to be enforced because people enforced them upon themselves. Roman society functioned with remarkable efficiency precisely because so much discipline was voluntary, even when burdensome. Voluntary discipline, however, carried emotional costs. Anxiety did not require external threat. It arose from anticipation. A Roman might worry about appearance even in the absence of immediate judgment. The possibility of being seen was enough. This anticipatory anxiety shaped daily rhythms. Preparation became habitual. Grooming routines were followed not only for present encounters, but for potential ones. The body was maintained as if always on display, even when alone. This condition blurred the boundary between role and identity. When presentation becomes constant, it begins to feel authentic. Romans did not experience themselves as performing roles continuously. They experienced themselves as being a certain way. Beauty standards shaped identity from the inside out. This internal shaping explains why Roman beauty standards rarely provoked rebellion. One does not rebel easily against what feels like oneself. The standards were not experienced as foreign impositions, but as expectations woven into personal sense of order. Yet moments of rupture did occur. Illness, injury, sudden poverty, or aging could disrupt the internal alignment between self-image and social expectation. At such moments, the gap between who one felt oneself to be and how one appeared widened. These moments were psychologically difficult. Roman texts describe shame, frustration, and resignation in the face of bodily change. The pain lay not only in physical decline, but in loss of legibility. A body that no longer matched expectation risked misinterpretation. Roman culture offered few tools for reconciling this gap. Consolation focused on endurance rather than acceptance. Individuals were encouraged to bear change with dignity, not to question why dignity depended on appearance. This emphasis on bearing rather than questioning is central to understanding Roman endurance. The ideal response to misfortune was composure. Emotional excess was itself a form of misalignment. Thus, even suffering had an aesthetic dimension. How one suffered mattered. Public grief, illness, or aging had to be managed visually. Beauty standards extended into moments of vulnerability, shaping how pain was displayed. This expectation of composed suffering appears repeatedly in Roman literature. Heroes endure silently. Elders decline with restraint. Excessive lamentation is criticized. The disciplined body remains the moral ideal, even under strain. Such ideals may appear harsh, but they offered clarity. In a world with limited medical intervention and frequent hardship, composure provided a sense of control. Beauty standards gave form to that composure. The Roman world was unpredictable. Disease, violence, and economic instability were common. Against this backdrop, predictable standards offered psychological anchoring. One could not control fate, but one could control presentation. This partial control mattered. It allowed individuals to maintain dignity even when circumstances deteriorated. Beauty standards, in this sense, were tools for survival, not merely oppression. Yet survival came with trade-offs. Compassion was limited by expectation. Those who could not maintain composure risked being judged rather than supported. The same standards that offered dignity to some denied it to others. This ambivalence runs through the Roman story. Beauty standards both stabilized and constrained. They provided meaning and inflicted pressure. They enabled endurance and demanded sacrifice. Understanding this ambivalence prevents simplistic conclusions. Roman beauty standards were neither purely cruel nor purely functional. They were deeply human responses to complex conditions. They emerged from a society that valued order, clarity, and continuity. They persisted because they aligned with those values. They were modified but not dismantled because alternatives were difficult to imagine. The Roman experience invites reflection on our own standards. We, too, live in societies where appearance communicates meaning, where self-presentation affects opportunity, and where judgment is often internalized. The difference lies not in structure, but in degree and visibility. Rome makes visible processes that often remain hidden today. It shows how standards are learned, how they persist, and how they shape identity. As this narrative continues, it does not aim to exhaust the topic, because beauty standards themselves are inexhaustible. They adapt, migrate, and reappear in new forms. Rome is one chapter in a longer human story, but it is a particularly clear chapter. Few societies documented their assumptions so thoroughly, even if indirectly. Through art, law, literature, and habit, Rome left us a record of how appearance can organize life. In listening carefully, we hear not commands, but patterns. Patterns of judgment, adaptation, and endurance. Patterns that repeat because they solve certain problems, even as they create others. The Roman lesson is not a warning carved in stone. It is an invitation to notice, to notice how bodies become texts, how texts become expectations, and how expectations become selves. Notice, too, how difficult it is to step outside such systems once they are internalized. Rome shows that liberation from beauty standards is not simply a matter of awareness. It requires reimagining how societies assign value. Romans did not undertake that reimagining. They lived within their standards, adjusted them, and passed them on. Their civilization ended, but their aesthetic logic survived. As long as bodies continue to be read as signs of discipline, worth, or belonging, the Roman legacy remains present. And so this story continues, not toward closure, but toward understanding. Understanding how deeply history inhabits the way we see. If we remain with the Roman world a little longer, one more subtle consequence of beauty standards becomes visible. They shaped how trust was distributed. Trust in Roman society was rarely abstract. It was inferred from signs, posture, grooming, restraint, and consistency of appearance over time. A body that appeared stable suggested a person who could be relied upon. This connection between appearance and trust influenced commerce, politics, and friendship alike. In business dealings, a well-presented individual was assumed to be disciplined and predictable. In political life, composure and visual authority lent credibility to speech. Even in private relationships, appearance played a quiet role in forming expectations of reliability. Because trust was so closely tied to appearance, beauty standards affected opportunity indirectly. Those who aligned with visual expectations found doors opening more easily. Those who did not faced hesitation, scrutiny, or delay. Rarely was this articulated openly. It was experienced as intuition. Roman intuition was trained intuition. It was shaped by repeated exposure to shared norms. Over time, these norms became shortcuts for judgment. They allowed quick decisions in a complex social environment, but they also narrowed perception. The narrowing of perception had cumulative effects. Once a person was categorized visually, new information was filtered through that category. A composed appearance reinforced assumptions of competence. A neglected one reinforced doubt. Beauty standards thus influenced interpretation as much as initial judgment. This interpretive inertia made social mobility difficult. A person seeking to move beyond their station had to overcome not only structural barriers but visual ones. Dress, grooming, and demeanor became tools for aspiration but also sites of risk. Missteps could confirm prejudice rather than challenge it. Roman satire is filled with figures who attempt visual ascent and fail. These stories served as warnings. They reinforced the idea that appearance should reflect status, not challenge it. Beauty standards thus helped stabilize hierarchy by discouraging visual experimentation. Yet, experimentation persisted. Ambitious individuals tested boundaries carefully, adjusting appearance incrementally. Some succeeded. Their success reinforced the idea that standards were flexible, but only within limits. The limits themselves remained unquestioned. This balance between flexibility and rigidity gave Roman beauty standards their resilience. They could accommodate change without losing authority. New fashions emerged, but the underlying logic of restraint and legibility endured. The emphasis on legibility deserves particular attention. Roman society valued bodies that could be read quickly and accurately. Ambiguity was unsettling. It complicated judgment and slowed decision-making. Beauty standards reduced ambiguity by encouraging conformity. Conformity, however, came at the cost of diversity. Bodies that did not fit the dominant visual language were marginalized or misunderstood. This marginalization often occurred quietly, without overt hostility. Silence and neglect were sufficient. Roman records contain glimpses of such marginal lives. Individuals noted briefly, often negatively, before disappearing from the narrative. Their fleeting presence reminds us that beauty standards shape not only inclusion, but documentation. Documentation itself followed aesthetic assumptions. What was described in detail was what aligned with expectation or violated it dramatically. Ordinary deviation often passed without record. History thus reflects beauty standards as much as it reflects events. This reflection complicates modern reconstruction. When we imagine Roman life, we see what Romans chose to preserve. Their choices were guided by values embedded in appearance. Beauty standards shaped the archive. Understanding this helps us read Roman sources critically. It encourages us to ask not only what is present, but what is absent and why. Absence is often the shadow of judgment. The Roman relationship with beauty also influenced how failure was narrated. When individuals fell from favor, physical decline was frequently emphasized. Stories of corruption often included descriptions of bodily excess or neglect. Appearance became evidence of moral collapse. These narratives reinforced the belief that virtue and beauty were aligned. Decline in one explained decline in the other. Such explanations simplified complex realities into moral lessons. Moral lessons are powerful tools. They travel easily and endure. Roman beauty standards were reinforced through such lessons, repeated in different forms across generations. As Rome transitioned through crises, these lessons became more urgent. Writers invoked earlier ideals to criticize present conditions. Beauty standards thus became symbols of lost order, even when that order had never been fully realized. This symbolic function added emotional weight to appearance. To look wrong was not merely personal failure, it was participation in decline. Individuals bore the burden of representing collective anxiety. Such burden intensified pressure during times of instability. When the world felt uncertain, standards tightened, judgment sharpened. Beauty became a site where order could still be asserted. This pattern is not unique to Rome, but Rome illustrates it vividly. Beauty standards grow stricter when societies feel threatened. They offer reassurance by reinforcing boundaries. Yet reassurance has limits. When too many bodies fail to meet expectations, standards lose credibility. Late Roman sources hint at this tension. Complaints multiply, nostalgia deepens, ideals drift further from reality. Even then, standards rarely disappear. They transform. They retreat into memory, religion, or philosophy. They survive by changing language rather than logic. The Roman case shows how beauty standards migrate across domains. When political authority weakens, aesthetic authority may persist. Appearance continues to organize trust and belonging even when institutions falter. This persistence explains why Roman beauty standards influenced successor cultures so deeply. They were not tied solely to Roman power. They were tied to human habits of perception. Habits of perception are difficult to change because they operate below conscious thought. Rome trained its people to see in particular ways. That training outlasted the empire itself. As listeners today, we inherit some of that training indirectly. The preference for restraint, balance, and legibility did not originate with us. It has a long history. Recognizing this history does not compel us to abandon these values. It invites us to examine how they function. Do they serve clarity or exclusion? Stability or rigidity? Trust or prejudice? Rome cannot answer these questions for us. It offers perspective, not prescription. By tracing Roman beauty standards in such detail, we see how deeply they shaped everyday life. They influenced who was trusted, who was heard, who was remembered. They operated quietly, persistently, and effectively. And perhaps that quiet effectiveness is the most important lesson. Systems of judgment rarely announce themselves. They embed in habit, expectation, and intuition. By the time they are noticed, they feel natural. Ancient Rome noticed little and endured much. Its beauty standards were not celebrated as ideology. They were lived as reality. In continuing to listen to this history, we are not moving toward an ending. We are circling a recognition that appearance has long been one of the most powerful tools societies use to organize themselves. Rome simply used it with remarkable clarity. When Roman beauty standards are traced to their quietest consequences, they reveal how deeply they shaped imagination itself. Romans did not merely judge bodies they encountered. They imagined people they had never met through aesthetic expectation. Before hearing a voice or learning a history, a Roman mind often supplied a visual template. That template carried assumptions. This imaginative preloading affected storytelling, rumor, and reputation. When news spread about an unfamiliar individual, listeners filled in gaps with visual inference. A respected figure was imagined as composed, restrained, and balanced. A suspicious one was imagined as excessive, uncontrolled, or neglectful. Appearance preceded knowledge. This habit shaped social narrative. Stories were more believable when bodies aligned with expectations. A tale of virtue attached more easily to a dignified body. A tale of corruption attached more easily to a body described as disordered. Beauty standards thus guided plausibility itself. Because plausibility mattered in courts, politics, and daily disputes, appearance influenced outcomes even without direct evidence. Roman society did not rely solely on proof. It relied on credibility. Credibility was visual before it was logical. This reliance made misinterpretation common and correction difficult. Once a body had been imagined a certain way, counter-evidence faced resistance. The visual frame held. Beauty standards created inertia in judgment. Such inertia explains why reputation in Rome was fragile but sticky. It could be damaged quickly by visible deviation, yet repaired only slowly, if at all. Time and consistency were required to overcome initial impressions. Consistency itself was a visual achievement. To appear the same over time signaled stability. Fluctuations suggested unreliability. Romans valued continuity not only in behavior, but in appearance. The body was expected to tell a coherent story across years. This expectation placed particular pressure on those undergoing transition. Adolescence, aging, illness, and shifts in status all disrupted visual continuity. At these moments, individuals were most vulnerable to misreading. Roman culture offered rituals to manage some transitions, coming-of-age ceremonies, marriage, mourning, but others remained exposed. Aging especially unfolded without clear markers. Individuals were expected to manage it privately while remaining publicly legible. The difficulty of this task appears in Roman writing as irony and resignation. Authors acknowledged that time would undo even the most careful management. Yet they rarely proposed alternative values. The system endured even as it was recognized as fragile. Fragility did not undermine authority. It heightened vigilance. When standards are difficult to maintain, adherence becomes more meaningful. Effort itself becomes proof of commitment. This logic extended to moral education. Parents did not promise children ease. They promised preparation. Beauty standards were part of that preparation, teaching children how to be seen correctly in a demanding world. Such preparation framed life as performance, but not in a theatrical sense. Performance was not deception. It was alignment. To perform correctly was to fulfill one's role. Roles mattered deeply in Roman society. Citizenship, gender, class, and age all carried expectations. Beauty standards helped signal adherence to these roles. Deviation confused interpretation and threatened order. Order, more than happiness, was Rome's priority. Beauty standards served order by reducing uncertainty. They allowed quick categorization in a complex society. This efficiency was valued, even when unfair. The Roman willingness to accept unfairness in exchange for order is one of its defining traits. Beauty standards illustrate this trade-off clearly. They simplified social life while narrowing opportunity. Narrowing opportunity was rarely acknowledged explicitly. It appeared as fate, misfortune, or personal failure. Structural bias remained invisible, masked by the language of appearance. This masking protected the system. When inequality is framed as aesthetic mismatch, it feels natural rather than constructed. Roman beauty standards thus disguised power relations beneath the surface of taste. Yet taste itself was cultivated. What Romans found pleasing was shaped by education, art, and habit. Beauty standards were learned preferences, reinforced until they felt innate. This learned nature becomes clear when standards changed across centuries. Hairstyles shifted. Grooming practices evolved. Yet Romans adapted quickly, treating new norms as obvious once established. Obviousness followed repetition. Repetition is the quiet engine of beauty standards. What is seen often enough becomes normal. What is normal becomes expected. What is expected becomes judged. Ancient Rome mastered this engine. Its standards were visible everywhere, in statues, coins, frescoes, public rituals, and daily interaction. There was no escaping the visual lesson. This saturation explains why Roman beauty standards shaped even those who questioned them. One could criticize excess while still absorbing the underlying values. The frame remained. As modern listeners, we may wonder whether Romans ever imagined a world without such judgment. Evidence suggests they rarely did. The idea that appearance might not matter was philosophically conceivable, but socially impractical. This impracticality is key. Beauty standards endure when alternatives seem unworkable. Rome could not imagine social life without visual cues. They were too useful. Usefulness does not equal justice, but it often equals persistence. The Roman case invites us to reflect on the usefulness of our own standards. What problems do they solve? What harms do they obscure? What alternatives feel impractical, and why? History does not answer these questions. It sharpens them. By listening to Roman beauty standards unfold across time, we hear how deeply they shaped perception, judgment, and imagination. We hear how bodies became arguments and appearances became evidence. Rome did not merely value beauty, it relied on it. That reliance shaped a civilization and left traces that still influence how humans see one another today. And as long as societies depend on appearance to make sense of themselves, the Roman story will remain unfinished, continuing quietly wherever bodies are seen, judged, and understood through inherited eyes.